All right, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk briefly about In Our Time by Ernest Hemingway, which is a collection of short stories. There are several versions of this book available. I think there's a 1924 edition, a 1925 edition. I'm pretty sure this is the last edition. I think this was 1930s, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, this is the Scribner's paperback reissue from the 1950s. Of course, I checked this out at my local library. As you can see there, this is a library book. Libraries exist. There is the card, right? Looks like this was last checked out on July 16th, 1982. So here's my little slip. This has to be returned by the 22nd. Of course, I'll drop it off today on my way to work, most likely. But yeah, this is the earliest Hemingway I've read. This collection of short stories predates the book that really put Hemingway kind of on the map, which was The Sun Also Rises, which I've not yet read, which was followed in 1929 by A Farewell to Arms. Okay, so yeah, I've read A Farewell to Arms. Now, in comparison to Snows of Kilimanjaro and other stories, which I just did a review for, this holds together much better. I think it's a more cohesive collection. Most of the stories in here focus on a character known as Nick Adams. There are several Nick Adams stories in Snows of Kilimanjaro collection. One of the better ones being The Killers, which was adapted into a couple of Hollywood feature films. But yeah, as a whole, I think this holds together better than that collection did. This is much more readable for me. Okay, and the structure of this book is a little bit odd. There are kind of like these chapter headings, or I guess like chapter one. It doesn't seem like it's related to the short story that follows, but I guess the themes are kind of there. There's these little chapter one, chapter two, chapter three. Some of them are about like World War One. Some of them are about bullfighting, and then you read the short story that follows it, and you're like, wait, this isn't about World War One, or this isn't about bullfighting. This is about a woman who is a 40-year-old woman that's trying to have a child with her spouse who's 25, and they're not able to have kids, and it just seems kind of like, how does this chapter heading and the little paragraph there relate to this? Well, thematically, they're kind of tied together. You're dealing a lot with disillusionment, nihilism in a lot of cases. This Hemingway is grouped in with the group of writers that are known as the Lost Generation, a term that was coined by Gertrude Stein. F. Scott Fitzgerald, the author of The Great Gatsby, falls into that group of writers. And you have people like J.R.R. Tolkien, who, even though he served in the trenches in World War I, he's not really grouped in with the Lost Generation because, for instance, Lord of the Rings is a much more hopeful work. It deals on themes of fellowship and perseverance against the odds and doing the right thing. Very much more heroic, most romantic, whereas this is kind of cynical. So the structure of the book, you have a lot of A-side and B-side stories in here. For instance, Indian Camp, one of the first stories in here where a young Nick Adams is going to like an Indian reservation with his Uncle George and his father. His father's a doctor. There's a woman in labor. The baby is not facing the right way, so he has to perform a cesarean section. The story that follows that up, called The Doctor and the Doctor's Wife, is kind of like the B side of that story. So you get kind of like an A and a B. And then you have The End of Something, which is another story in here where Nick Adams is breaking up with his girlfriend. And then the B side is a story that's titled The 3-Day Blow, where Nick Adams is out talking with his friend, hanging out with them, and they are discussing the breakup. Although the whole book doesn't follow that structure. There are stories kind of in the middle that don't follow Nick Adams as a character at all. But Nick Adams as a character does he's in the grouping of early stories. He's in the end of the book, The Big Two-Hearted Rivers, part 1 and 2, where Nick is out in nature, like fishing for trout, you know, catching fish and living off the land. I enjoyed this collection of works very much, although I will say I know a lot of people out there are not going to like Hemingway. He's not for everybody. I realize that. He does use racially charged language, and it's not just specifically geared towards African Americans. He has slurs. There are slurs included in here against Italians, against Native Americans, against Jews, against Irishmen. Now, is that Hemingway being racist, or is that the characters that he's writing that are using racially charged language? I don't know. Some people say that Hemingway's just racist, and that's why he's using that. But I don't know the man, okay? I have no idea. Um, I'm able to look past those things and read it, and it doesn't bother me too much. But some people, it really, they get fixated on it, and they're like, oh, I can't read this. You know, this man is a misogynist and he's a racist. And I'm just like, okay. I mean, if you don't want to read it, then don't read it. I understand totally. There's some people, they can't read Mark Twain. It really turns them off. So anyways, I could get into a whole conversation on that. I'm not going to derail this book review. I'm just going to say that that's in there. If that's going to be something that offends you, then probably don't read it. But I'm going to wrap things up. I don't really have a whole lot to say about Hemingway. I will come back to him at some point. I do want to read the rest of his works, but I've got a Wheel of Time. I've got to read book 4, The Wheel of Time, coming up here. I'm going to try to squeeze in Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Gambler. I read Notes from the Underground, I think like 8 months or 9 months ago, and I never finished reading the second story in here. So I'm going to try to squeeze that story in before I start The Wheel of Time, because I think The Wheel of Time is going to probably take me the entire month of August to get through. I'm not really jazzed about reading it, and the book is like, it's like this. It's a brick. It's like a phone book. And I've kind of just been looking at it, just going, I really don't feel like reading this right now, but it's here. The bell tolls, and I must answer the call. So that's it. That's all I got. Thanks for watching, and have a wonderful day.